A stolen childhood. The cold morning air bit at 12-year-old Lily Carter's cheeks as she stepped out of the car, her tiny hands clutching the fabric of her oversized coat. It smelled like expensive perfume, the kind her mother, Jessica Blake, drenched herself in every morning. The courthouse loomed before her, a fortress of stone and glass, its imposing pillars stretching toward the sky. It was a place of decisions, finalities, and whispered fates, one of which was hers. "Keep your head down, Lily. No talking unless I tell you to," Jessica snapped, gripping Lily's wrist a little too tight. The woman's long, manicured nails dug into the fragile skin beneath Lily's coat. "Yes, Mom," Lily murmured, her voice barely audible. Jessica released her, straightening her fur-lined jacket and flicking a hand through her professionally styled hair. To anyone watching, she was the picture of a devoted single mother, polished, poised, and powerful. But Lily knew better. She knew what hid behind that perfect mask. The courthouse doors swung open, and a sharply dressed man in a navy blue suit approached them. His salt and pepper hair was neatly combed, and his leather briefcase gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Gregory Hayes, her mother's lawyer. "Ms. Blake," he greeted, his voice smooth but firm. "We're expected in Courtroom 3. Have you prepared Lily for her testimony?" Jessica let out a scoff, flipping her sunglasses onto her head. "Of course. She knows what to say. We've been over it plenty of times." Lily bit the inside of her cheek, heart pounding. She knew the script by heart. Dad never cared. Dad was violent. Dad was unpredictable. Mom did everything for me. Mom kept me safe. Lies. Every single word was a lie. A few feet away, a man stood near the entrance of the courtroom. A man with tired eyes and broad shoulders weighed down by the past. Nathan Carter, her father. Lily's breath caught. He looked different from the last time she had seen him. Thinner, his face lined with exhaustion, his dark hair streaked with gray. But his eyes were the same, gentle, kind, and full of love. For a fleeting second, their gazes met. Nathan gave her a small smile, lifting his hand in the slightest wave. Before Lily could react, Jessica's grip tightened on her arm, yanking her forward. "Don't look at him," she hissed, her voice low and sharp. "He's nothing to us anymore. Understand?" Lily didn't respond. Jessica took it as submission. Gregory checked his watch. "Let's go in. The judge won't wait." The moment they stepped into the courtroom, the weight in Lily's chest grew heavier. The high ceilings stretched over dark wooden benches and thick, leather-bound books that lined the judge's bench. The American flag stood tall behind the magistrate's seat, and at the very center of it all sat Judge Arthur Williams, a stern-faced man with an air of absolute authority. "Ladies and gentlemen," the bailiff called, his voice echoing, "Court is now in session. The matter of custody regarding minor child Lily Carter will be heard before Judge Williams." Lily's small frame trembled as she slid into her seat next to her mother and Gregory. Across the aisle, Nathan and his attorney, Sarah Monroe, sat quietly. Unlike Gregory, Sarah's demeanor was calm but fierce, her sharp eyes scanning every movement Jessica made. Judge Williams looked between the two parties before settling his gaze on Lily. "Miss Carter, are you comfortable speaking today?" Lily's hands clenched the hem of her dress beneath the table. Jessica answered before she could. "Your Honor, my daughter has been through so much. This process is difficult for her, but she understands her duty. She's prepared to share how her father's absence has affected her." Nathan stiffened. Sarah spoke up. "Your Honor, before we proceed, we'd like to present new evidence regarding Ms. Blake's treatment of Lily." Jessica let out an annoyed breath. "More lies, I presume." Judge Williams raised a hand to silence her. "Ms. Monroe, proceed." Sarah stood, walking toward the judge's bench with a thick file. "We have recent medical reports from Lily's pediatrician detailing malnutrition and signs of emotional distress." Jessica's face twisted into feigned shock. "That's absurd. My daughter has the best care. If she's lost weight, it's because she's growing. Sarah ignored her, flipping through the documents. We also have financial records that show large withdrawals from Lily's trust fund, money meant for her education and medical needs, being spent on personal luxury items, vacations, and casino expenses. A murmur rippled through the room. Jessica paled. That money is mine to manage. It's used for household expenses. Would you like us to pull up the receipts for designer handbags and $1,000 spa treatments? Sarah countered smoothly. Gregory quickly leaned over to whisper something in Jessica's ear, calming her. Judge Williams skimmed the records, his expression darkening. Ms. Blake, we will address these financial discrepancies, but let's move forward with testimony. Ms. Carter, would you like to speak to the court? Jessica's hand curled around Lily's knee beneath the table, a silent warning. Lily gulped, her throat dry. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Williams nodded. Please tell us about your home life. The pressure in Lily's chest grew unbearable. She could feel her mother's stare boring into her, willing her to obey. But across the courtroom, her father was watching too, his gaze steady, silent encouragement in the storm. Her fingers trembled as she wiped her sweaty palms on her dress. She took a breath. And then she did something her mother never expected. She told the truth. I'm not safe at home, she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. The courtroom stilled. Jessica flinched as though she'd been slapped. Lily. Judge Williams raised a hand, silencing her. Go on, Miss Carter. Lily's heart pounded. She thought of the bruises hidden beneath her dress, the long nights left alone, the times she had been locked in her room with no food because Jessica had lost her temper. I'm scared, she said, her voice louder this time. I'm scared to go home. Jessica's hand slipped from her knee. Nathan leaned forward slightly, eyes locked on his daughter. His lawyer said nothing. This was Lily's moment. Jessica, however, was losing control. Lily, stop this nonsense. You don't know what you're saying. Ms. Blake, I will hold you in contempt if you interrupt again, Judge Williams warned, his expression sharp. Tears welled in Lily's eyes, but she didn't stop. Dad never hurt me, she said, her voice breaking. Mom told me to lie before. But I don't want to lie anymore. I want to live with my dad. Jessica shot up from her seat. You ungrateful little. Security was already moving. Enough. Judge Williams's voice boomed through the room. He turned to the bailiff. Remove Ms. Blake from the courtroom until she regains her composure. Jessica's face twisted with rage as two officers stepped forward. This is a joke. My daughter belongs with me. You can't take her. She's not yours to own, Nathan said, his voice quiet but firm. As security escorted Jessica out, her threats echoed down the hall, but they no longer mattered. Lily sat still, her small hands gripping the edge of the table. She had done it. She had spoken the truth, and for the first time in 3 years, she felt free. The truth unveiled. The courtroom door slammed shut behind Jessica Blake, her voice still ringing in the air as security dragged her out. Lily sat frozen in place, her breath shaky, her small hands gripping the table so tightly her knuckles turned white. The silence that followed was suffocating, an eerie contrast to the storm that had just passed. Across the room, her father, Nathan Carter, had barely moved. His sharp jaw was clenched, his hands folded tightly together, as though he were physically restraining himself from running to his daughter. He had waited years for this moment, to hear Lily speak her truth, and now that she had, he looked both relieved and shattered all at once. Judge Arthur Williams adjusted his glasses and let out a heavy sigh, rubbing the bridge of his nose. This is a highly unusual case, he finally said, looking from Lily to the legal teams. Given the gravity of these accusations and the disruption caused by Ms. Blake, I am calling for an emergency evaluation of Lily's home life. Effective immediately, she will be placed in temporary protective custody until a full investigation can be conducted. Lily's chest tightened, W. What does that mean? Sarah Monroe, Nathan's lawyer, turned to her with a reassuring look. It means you won't have to go home with your mother, Lily. But the court needs to verify everything before making a final decision. Lily's heart pounded. She had expected the truth to set her free, not trap her in some limbo between safety and uncertainty. Jessica's lawyer, Gregory Hayes, stood with an artificial calmness, adjusting his tie. Your Honor, my client has always acted in the best interests of her daughter. This sudden upheaval is unnecessary. We strongly object to the decision of removing Lily from her home before a proper investigation. Judge Williams wasn't having it. Mr. Hayes, your client is currently being detained for contempt of court. Her behavior today has only reinforced the concerns brought before me. Until I have further clarity, Lily will not be returning to her mother's custody. Lily swallowed hard. Sarah quickly stood. Your Honor, given the circumstances, we request that Lily be placed under Mr. Carter's care instead of a state facility. Gregory scoffed. Absolutely not. Mr. Carter has had no legal custodial rights for years. The court deemed him unfit in a previous ruling. Based on fabricated evidence, Sarah interjected smoothly, her eyes narrowing at Gregory, which we intend to prove in full during these proceedings. Nathan finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. I've never stopped fighting for my daughter. I will do whatever it takes to keep her safe. If you need supervised visits, I'll comply. If you need proof that my home is fit, I'll provide it. But please, don't put her through the trauma of a foster facility when I'm right here. The judge studied Nathan carefully, tapping his fingers against the bench. Then his gaze shifted to Lily. Miss Carter, he said, his tone softer than before. Do you feel safe with your father? Lily's breath caught in her throat. She had spent years being told her father didn't love her, that he had abandoned her, that he wasn't the man she remembered from before the divorce. But looking at him now, seeing the worry in his eyes, the careful way he spoke as though afraid to scare her away, she knew the truth. She nodded. Yes, she whispered. Then, with more strength, I feel safe with him. Judge Williams exhaled, nodding. Very well. Until this case is resolved, Lily Carter is to be placed in the temporary custody of her father, Nathan Carter. The court-appointed guardian ad litem will oversee the transition and monitor Lily's well-being. For the first time since she had entered the courtroom, relief washed over Lily like a warm wave. Nathan closed his eyes briefly, his shoulders sagging with what looked like months, no, years, of built-up tension releasing all at once. He turned to Sarah, who gave him an approving nod. Gregory, however, did not look pleased. Your Honor, we demand that visitation rights for Ms. Blake be reinstated as soon as possible. Judge Williams wasn't moved. Ms. Blake will undergo a psychological evaluation, alcohol rehabilitation, and parenting therapy before any visitation will be considered. Until then, no contact. Lily's stomach churned at the thought of her mother coming back for her, but for now, she was safe. That will be all for today, the judge declared. We will reconvene in 2 weeks to assess the progress of this case. Court adjourned. The gavel struck. Lily's new life had officially begun. The escape from the past. As the courtroom emptied, Nathan remained still in his seat, as if afraid to move too quickly and break the fragile reality before him. It was Sarah who finally nudged him. Go to her. He didn't need to be told twice. Nathan stood, crossing the distance between them in slow, deliberate steps. Lily watched him, her small fingers fidgeting in her lap, unsure of what to expect. Then, ever so gently, Nathan lowered himself to her level. Hey, sweetheart, he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Lily hesitated for only a moment before throwing herself into his arms. Nathan let out a shaky breath, his arms wrapping tightly around her tiny frame. I've missed you so much, he whispered into her hair. Lily buried her face into his shoulder, her fingers gripping his jacket as though she were afraid he would vanish. I missed you too, Daddy, she choked out. He pulled back just enough to see her face, brushing away a stray tear from her cheek. "It's going to be okay now. I promise." Lily nodded, but she wasn't naive. She knew things weren't truly over. Not yet. Jessica wasn't going to let go easily. A home she barely remembered. The ride to Nathan's house was quiet. Lily stared out the window, watching the city streets blur past as she tried to process everything that had happened. Her father's house was unfamiliar. A modern two-story home, nothing like the apartment she had lived in with her mother. The yard was big, the front porch wide. It wasn't a place filled with loud voices, broken bottles, or locked doors. It smelled safe. "Come on," Nathan said gently, opening the door for her. Lily hesitated before stepping inside. The living room was cozy, with soft leather couches and bookshelves lining the walls. There was a fireplace with family photos above the mantel. Some of Nathan, some of an older couple she guessed were her grandparents. But there was one in particular that made her breath hitch. A photo of her. It was old, taken when she was around 7, sitting on her father's shoulders at the beach. She had completely forgotten that picture existed. "You kept this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Nathan turned, following her gaze. His expression softened. "Of course I did. I kept everything." Lily swallowed hard, suddenly feeling an ache in her chest that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with longing. "You can explore if you want," Nathan offered. "Your room is upstairs. We can decorate it however you like." Lily nodded slowly, her fingers brushing against the picture frame before she turned toward the staircase. Halfway up, she paused. "Dad?" Nathan looked up. "Yeah, sweetheart." She hesitated, then whispered, "Mom always said you didn't want me." His eyes darkened, his jaw tightening, but when he spoke, his voice was heartbreakingly gentle. "Lily, I have always wanted you." A lump formed in her throat. She turned away quickly, continuing up the stairs before he could see the fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. For the first time in years, she wasn't crying because she was scared. She was crying because, for the first time, she felt wanted. And that was a feeling she never wanted to lose again. Shadows of the past. The silence of Nathan Carter's house was something Lily had never known before. It wasn't the eerie, tense silence she had grown used to. The silence of waiting for the next outburst, the next slammed door, the next wave of rage from her mother. This was different. It was peaceful. For the first time in years, she could hear her own thoughts. Her new bedroom was bigger than she expected. The walls were painted a soft blue, with sunlight spilling in from a wide window that overlooked the backyard. It was simple, undecorated, but safe. Nathan had let her explore the space on her own, giving her time to adjust. But even as she unpacked the small bag of clothes the court had allowed her to bring, she couldn't shake the feeling of unease crawling up her spine. This was too good to be true. Would it last? Would her mother find a way to take it all away? A soft knock at the door startled her. "Hey, sweetheart." Nathan's voice was gentle, cautious. "Can I come in?" Lily hesitated before nodding. "Yeah." He stepped inside, taking in the playroom. "I know it's not much yet, but we'll fix it up however you like. You can pick the colors, decorations, whatever makes you comfortable." Lily sat on the edge of the bed, running her fingers over the fabric of the sheets. "I don't really know what I like," she admitted. Nathan's face softened. "That's okay. We'll figure it out together." There was a pause before he cleared his throat. "I also, got you something." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small keychain. It was a tiny silver turtle, its shell painted with little blue gems. Lily stared at it, confused. "It's from the aquarium we went to when you were 6, Nathan explained. "You spent the whole day staring at the turtles. You begged me to buy you one. But since we couldn't take a real turtle home, we got this instead." Lily's fingers closed around the keychain. She remembered. It was the same day her mother had screamed at her for getting her shoes wet in the aquarium's tide pool exhibit. She had thrown the keychain away after that, calling it cheap garbage. You kept it. Lily's voice was barely a whisper. Nathan nodded. Of course. Her throat tightened. No matter what her mother had told her, the truth was right in front of her. He hadn't forgotten her. He had never stopped loving her. Lily swallowed hard, gripping the turtle tightly. Thanks, Dad. Nathan smiled, brushing a stray hair behind her ear. Anytime, sweetheart. Now, you hungry? I was thinking we could order some pizza. For the first time in a long while, Lily didn't hesitate. Yeah, that sounds nice. A dangerous call. That night, after pizza and a movie, Lily lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Everything felt surreal. For the first time, she wasn't afraid to go to sleep. She didn't have to listen for the sound of breaking glass or the sharp voice of her mother screaming about something meaningless. But just as she began to drift off, her phone buzzed. She frowned, sitting up and grabbing it from the nightstand. Unknown caller. Lily hesitated. Only a handful of people had her number. The court had given her a temporary phone so she could communicate with her advocate and her father. It buzzed again. She answered, and immediately regretted it. You ungrateful little brat. Lily's heart stopped. Her mother. She hadn't been allowed to call. The court had forbidden it. But here she was. Lily gripped the sheets, forcing herself to breathe. Mom. Don't you mom me, Jessica spat. I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me. You humiliated me in court. You made me look like some kind of monster. Lily flinched. You listen to me, and you listen good, Jessica hissed. This isn't over. That judge, that court, they don't know anything. I will get you back, and when I do, you'll regret every word you said in that courtroom. Lily squeezed her eyes shut. I don't want to come back, she whispered. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. Then, Jessica's voice dropped to something colder. More dangerous. You think you're safe with him, she sneered. You think he's better than me. Let me tell you something, Lily. He's not. He never was. He left you once, and he'll do it again. Lily's hands trembled. That's not true. Jessica laughed, low and cruel. Isn't it? Just wait. One day, you'll wake up, and he'll be gone. And you'll realize I was the only one who ever really loved you. Lily's breath hitched. Please, don't call me again. Don't worry, Jessica said, her voice dripping with venom. Next time, I won't be calling. Next time, I'll be there. Click. The line went dead. Lily's stomach twisted painfully. She curled into herself, gripping the blankets. She shouldn't have answered. She should have known better. Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to cry. She wouldn't let her mother win. A father's promise. Nathan knocked softly on the door early the next morning. Hey, sweetheart, you awake? Lily sat up quickly, brushing away the evidence of her sleepless night. Yeah. Nathan stepped inside, a warm smile on his face. I was thinking we could go out today, get some things for your room. Maybe grab some pancakes. Lily hesitated. Normally, she would have loved that, but after last night's call, her stomach was in knots. Nathan's smile faltered slightly. Lily, what's wrong? She bit her lip, debating whether to tell him. If she told him, would he get mad? Would he think she had done something wrong? But then she looked at him, the worry in his face, the patience in his voice. He wasn't like her mother. She took a deep breath. She called me last night. Nathan stilled. His entire posture changed. Who? Lily looked down. Mom. Silence. Then, pure steel in his voice. What did she say? Lily hesitated before whispering. She said she's going to take me back. That you'll leave me again. That you don't really want me. Nathan closed his eyes, taking a deep, measured breath. When he spoke again, his voice was calm, but fierce. Lily. He knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. "I don't know what lies your mother told you, but listen to me now. I will never leave you. Not again. Not ever." Lily felt something inside her crack. Something small, something fragile. "Promise," she whispered. Nathan cupped her cheek, his eyes shining. "I promise, sweetheart, with everything I have." For the first time since the call, Lily believed him. She threw her arms around him, holding on tight. Nathan held her just as fiercely, silently swearing that no one, not Jessica, not the court, not the past, would take her away from him again. Because this time, he was ready for the fight. And this time, he was going to win. The fight for freedom. Lily had never known what it felt like to wake up without fear. For years, her mornings had been filled with dread. The sound of bottles clinking, her mother's sharp voice snapping at her for things she hadn't even done yet. She had learned to move quietly, to avoid drawing attention to herself. But here, in her father's house, there was only quiet. Sunlight streamed through her window, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't wake up feeling trapped. She stretched beneath the soft blankets, her fingers still curled around the little turtle keychain her father had given her. "I will never leave you." The words from the night before echoed in her mind, bringing a lump to her throat. He had promised, and something deep inside her told her he meant it. But her mother's voice still whispered in the back of her mind. "You think you're safe. Just wait." Lily shivered and pushed the thought away. She wouldn't let fear control her anymore. A soft knock at the door made her sit up. "Morning, sweetheart," Nathan called from the other side. "Hope you're hungry." Lily blinked in surprise. Yeah. Be down in a second." She dressed quickly, sweatpants and a hoodie, the kind of clothes she had never been allowed to wear at home because they weren't presentable. When she padded down the stairs, she nearly stopped in shock. The kitchen smelled like pancakes and syrup. Nathan stood at the stove, flipping pancakes with practiced ease. "Hope you still like these. Used to be your favorite." Lily hesitated. You remember that?" Nathan turned, his expression soft. "Of course I do." She swallowed hard and took a seat at the table. The plate of golden pancakes in front of her looked almost too perfect. She picked up her fork, expecting her stomach to protest the food like it always did when she was stressed. But to her surprise, it didn't. She wasn't stressed. For the first time in forever, she was just hungry. Nathan sat across from her, his own plate barely touched. He was watching her carefully, like he was waiting for her to say something. Lily took a deep breath. "She called me again last night." Nathan's jaw tensed. He put down his fork slowly. "What did she say?" Lily traced a line in the syrup with her fork. "That she's coming for me. That the court won't stop her." Nathan closed his eyes for a long moment, inhaling deeply through his nose. When he opened them again, there was no anger, just fierce determination. "She's wrong." "But what if she—" "Lily," Nathan interrupted gently. "She can't just take you. The court is watching her now. She broke the no-contact order. That alone is going to cause problems for her. And if she tries anything, we'll be ready." Lily stared at him. "We?" Nathan nodded. "You and me. We're in this together, okay? You're not alone anymore." The words settled deep into Lily's chest. She wasn't alone. Not anymore. A war brewing. Jessica Blake was furious. The tiny holding cell they had thrown her into overnight smelled like sweat and disinfectant. She had been released on bail that morning, but the damage was already done. Her reputation was ruined. The courtroom outburst. The truth Lily had revealed. The damning financial records. Everything was spiraling out of control. She sat in her lawyer's office now, arms crossed, nails tapping against the desk as Gregory Hayes reviewed the court's latest ruling. His face was impassive, but she could see the way his lips pressed together. He wasn't happy. "This is bad, Jessica," she scoffed. "Tell me something I don't know." Gregory set the papers down. You broke the no-contact order. That alone is enough to put your custody case in jeopardy." Jessica leaned forward. "Then fix it." Gregory sighed. "The judge has ordered an emergency evaluation of your mental state. Until that's cleared, you're not allowed near Lily. Supervised visitation isn't even on the table right now." Jessica's nails dug into her palms. She was losing, and she would not allow that to happen. "Listen to me, Greg," she said, her voice dangerously smooth. "Lily is my daughter. I raised her. I took care of her. I won't let some judge take her away because of a few stupid mistakes." Gregory hesitated. "If you push this too hard, you could end up losing her permanently." Jessica forced a smile. "Then I guess we'll just have to make sure that doesn't happen." Gregory didn't like the way she said that. Not one bit. A home that feels real. Lily wasn't sure what to expect at her father's house, but what surprised her the most was how normal everything felt. The next few days were quiet, peaceful. Nathan worked from home most of the time, but whenever he had to step out, he made sure someone, whether it was his lawyer, the court-appointed guardian, or a neighbor, was nearby to check in on Lily. It felt safe. She had her first therapy session, and though she had barely spoken, just being there made something inside her feel a little lighter. Nathan never pushed her to talk. He never demanded anything from her. He just let her exist. One evening, they sat on the couch, flipping through channels on the TV. Nathan glanced at her. "So, what do kids your age even watch these days?" Lily shrugged. "I dunno. Mom never let me watch TV unless it was something she liked." Nathan's jaw tightened slightly, but he didn't push. Instead, he handed her the remote. "Then it's your turn to pick." Lily hesitated before flipping through the channels. She settled on an old animated movie she hadn't seen since she was a little kid, one her mother had always said was too childish. But here, in the dim glow of the living room, she curled up on the couch and watched the whole thing. And for the first time in forever, she felt like a kid again. The threat returns, but peace never lasts. A few days later, Nathan got a call that made his blood run cold. It was from Sarah Monroe, his lawyer. "Nathan, we have a problem." He put the phone on speaker so Lily could hear. "What is it?" Sarah exhaled. "Jessica's filing an emergency petition to have the custody case reconsidered. She's claiming that Lily was coached to lie in court." Lily felt her stomach drop. "What? That's not true," she burst out. "I know," Sarah said, "but she's desperate. And when desperate people have money and influence, they get dangerous." Nathan clenched his fists. "What's our next move?" Sarah's voice hardened. "We fight. We gather more evidence. We bring in more witnesses. We prove that Jessica is unfit." Lily felt her heart pound. Her mother wasn't giving up. This wasn't over. Nathan reached over, squeezing her hand. "No matter what happens, Lily, we're going to win this. I won't let her take you again." Lily swallowed hard. She believed him. But deep down, she knew one thing for certain. Jessica wasn't done yet. And the worst was yet to come. A storm on the horizon. Lily had always thought of her mother as invincible. No matter how cruel Jessica had been, no matter how many lies she spun, she always won. But now, for the first time, it felt like the perfect illusion her mother had created was cracking. Nathan had promised they would fight. He had promised she wouldn't be taken away again. But deep down, fear still clawed at Lily's stomach. What if the court believed her mother? What if they thought she really had been coached? She had fought so hard to tell the truth. Would it be enough? The emergency hearing. A few days later, the emergency custody hearing was scheduled. Lily wasn't supposed to go. Sarah had suggested it might be better for her to stay home. But she had refused. She wanted to be there. She wanted to hear everything that was said. When they arrived at the courthouse, Nathan squeezed her hand. "No matter what happens in there, just remember, you're not alone." Lily nodded, gripping his hand tighter. Inside the courtroom, Jessica Blake was already seated with her lawyer, Gregory Hayes. She looked different than before. Her usual confidence was cracked around the edges, but the fire in her eyes remained. She shot Lily a chilling smile, one that made her stomach churn. Judge Arthur Williams wasted no time. We are here today to address Ms. Blake's petition to reconsider the previous ruling in this case. Ms. Monroe, you may proceed. Sarah stood. Your Honor, we have provided extensive evidence proving that Jessica Blake is an unfit mother. We have medical records, financial statements, and most importantly, testimony from Lily Carter herself, who bravely revealed the abuse she suffered at the hands of her mother. Jessica scoffed, shaking her head dramatically. This is absurd, she muttered under her breath. Judge Williams narrowed his eyes. Ms. Blake, you will have your turn to speak. Sarah continued. Ms. Blake's petition claims that Lily was coached into lying about her experiences. However, we have additional witnesses today who will refute this claim. Judge Williams nodded. Proceed. Sarah turned toward the courtroom door. We'd like to call Dr. Evelyn Carter, a licensed child psychologist who has been working with Lily since the initial hearing. The door opened, and a middle-aged woman with short blonde hair and kind eyes stepped inside. Jessica stiffened. I wasn't informed of this witness, she hissed at Gregory. Gregory adjusted his tie. Neither was I. Dr. Carter took the stand, was sworn in, and then faced the judge. Your Honor, I have been conducting regular sessions with Lily Carter over the past 2 weeks. In that time, I have found zero evidence to suggest that she was coached into lying. Her statements have remained consistent, and the trauma she has expressed aligns with the medical evidence we have gathered. Sarah nodded. And in your professional opinion, do you believe it would be in Lily's best interest to return to her mother's custody? Dr. Carter's expression darkened. Absolutely not. Lily has shown severe anxiety and distress when discussing the possibility of returning to her mother's home. She has described past incidents of neglect and emotional manipulation that are deeply concerning. In my professional opinion, removing her from her father's care would be catastrophic to her mental and emotional well-being. A heavy silence fell over the courtroom. Jessica's fingers curled into fists. This is ridiculous, she hissed. Judge Williams ignored her and turned to Gregory. Mr. Hayes, do you have any questions for the witness? Gregory hesitated before standing. Dr. Carter, is it possible that Lily's negative view of her mother has been influenced by outside factors? Dr. Carter raised a brow. Outside factors such as what? Gregory shrugged. Her father, his attorney, other adults who might want to sway her opinion. Dr. Carter didn't even blink. Lily is 12 years old. She is capable of expressing her own experiences, and what she has expressed is fear of her mother and a strong emotional connection to her father. That is not outside influence. That is reality. Lily's chest tightened. Someone was fighting for her. Someone believed her. Gregory's jaw clenched. No further questions. Judge Williams turned back to Sarah. You may continue. Sarah nodded. Next, we would like to call Lily's former school counselor, Ms. Rebecca Owens, to the stand. Jessica's face paled. The school counselor, a woman in her late 40s with dark hair pulled into a tight bun, walked in and took her seat at the stand. Lily was one of my students for 3 years, Ms. Owens said. I personally reported multiple signs of abuse to Child Protective Services, all of which were dismissed because Ms. Blake had a powerful lawyer who fought to discredit them. Jessica sat rigid, her nails digging into the table. Ms. Owens continued. Lily came to school hungry more times than I can count. She often showed up with bruises, but when asked, she would say she was just clumsy. She avoided answering questions about home life and displayed the same patterns of fear and withdrawal that I've seen in other abused children. Sarah took a step forward. Did you ever speak to Ms. Blake about your concerns? Ms. Owens nodded, her face darkening. Yes, and every time she told me to mind my own business. She accused me of trying to interfere with her parenting. And then, after every report I made, Lily would disappear from school for days at a time. Jessica stood abruptly. This is nothing but a personal attack. Judge Williams slammed his gavel. Ms. Blake, sit down. Now. Jessica's nostrils flared, but she dropped back into her seat. Sarah looked back at the judge. Your Honor, we rest our case. There is overwhelming evidence proving that Ms. Blake is unfit to have custody of Lily Carter. Judge Williams folded his hands, his expression unreadable. Thank you, Ms. Monroe. Mr. Hayes, do you have any further arguments? Gregory sighed, rubbing his temples. Your Honor, we believe that Ms. Blake has been under immense stress and that her behavior has been unfairly scrutinized. However, given the severity of the allegations, we withdraw our petition. Jessica snapped her head toward him. What? Gregory turned to her, his expression firm. Jessica, you've lost. Jessica shot up from her seat. No, this is my daughter. You can't just take her from me. Judge Williams slammed his gavel again. Ms. Blake, enough. Security officers stepped forward, ready to intervene. Jessica's eyes darted around the room, wild and desperate. Then, suddenly, she turned her gaze directly to Lily. And Lily felt her blood run cold. You think you've won, Jessica hissed. You think you'll be happy with him. You have no idea what you've done. Lily shrank back, pressing closer to Nathan's side. Judge Williams wasted no more time. Effective immediately, sole custody of Lily Carter is granted to Nathan Carter. Ms. Blake's parental rights are hereby terminated. The words hung in the air. Lily barely processed it. Her mother was gone. She was free. Jessica screamed in rage as security officers dragged her from the courtroom. Her voice echoed down the hallway, but Lily didn't listen. She turned to her father, her voice barely above a whisper. Is it really over? Nathan knelt in front of her, brushing her hair back gently. His voice was soft, but sure. Yes, sweetheart, it's over. For the first time in years, Lily let out a breath. And for the first time ever, she knew she was safe. A new beginning. The world outside the courthouse felt different. Lily had never noticed how blue the sky was or how warm the sun felt against her skin. She had never really stopped to listen to the hum of the city around her, the distant chatter of people living their lives. But now, standing on the courthouse steps beside her father, she felt like she was breathing for the first time. Her mother was gone. The chain she had worn for years had been broken. Nathan squeezed her hand gently. You okay? Lily nodded, but the lump in her throat made it impossible to speak. Sarah Monroe, their lawyer, stepped up beside them. Nathan, I'll send over the final custody paperwork later today. There are still some legal loose ends to tie up, but as of now, Lily is officially yours. Nathan's grip on her hand tightened just slightly. His voice was steady, but Lily could hear the emotion underneath it. Thank you, Sarah, for everything. Sarah smiled warmly. Just doing my job. But honestly, Lily, she turned to look at her. You're the bravest kid I've ever met. You saved yourself today. Lily wasn't sure how to respond to that. She had never thought of herself as brave. For so long, she had been afraid, trapped, helpless, powerless. But now, she wasn't afraid anymore. Sarah checked her watch. I have to head back to the office. If you need anything, call me. She gave Lily one last nod. Take care of yourself, okay? Lily nodded. Okay. Sarah disappeared down the courthouse steps, leaving her alone with Nathan. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They just stood there, letting reality sink in. Then Nathan let out a deep breath and smiled down at her. Let's go home, kiddo. And for the first time, it really was home. Adjusting to freedom. The first week was the strangest. Lily kept waiting for something to go wrong. She expected to wake up to her mother's voice, or to hear screaming from downstairs, or to feel the weight of fear in her chest. But none of it happened. There were no fights, no locked doors, no punishments. Instead, she found small moments of peace she had never known before. She could wake up whenever she wanted. No one yelled at her for sleeping too late. She could eat what she wanted. No one shamed her for having an extra slice of toast or finishing all the juice. She could speak without fear. No one threatened her for saying the wrong thing. But the hardest part was learning how to be a kid again. Nathan noticed it almost immediately. "You don't have to ask permission for everything, sweetheart," he told her one day when she had hesitated before turning on the TV. Lily frowned. I don't want to get in trouble." Nathan's face softened. "You're not going to get in trouble for watching TV, Lily." She stared at the remote in her hand. It felt like something foreign, something that didn't belong to her. She had spent so long walking on eggshells that now, standing in the middle of a house where she was actually safe, she didn't know how to stop. Nathan must have sensed it because he sat down beside her on the couch and handed her the remote. "Here, watch whatever you want." Lily hesitated. Then, slowly, she flipped through the channels. She stopped on an old cartoon, one she had loved as a kid but had never been allowed to watch because her mother thought it was too childish. Nathan smiled. "Good choice." And just like that, something inside her shifted. For the first time in years, she curled up on the couch, eating a bowl of cereal, and watched cartoons without fear. It was a small thing, but to her, it was everything. The nightmare that didn't win. The nightmares didn't stop right away. Some nights, she still woke up shaking, hearing her mother's voice in her head. "You think you're safe. I'll get you back. You'll regret this." She would wake up gasping for air, her fingers clutching the sheets like she was still trapped in her mother's house. But this time, she wasn't alone. Nathan would hear her moving and knock on her door. "Lily, you okay?" At first, she had said yes. But one night, when the nightmare was especially bad, she had whispered, "No." Nathan didn't hesitate. He had just stepped inside, sat on the edge of her bed, and waited. And after a long moment, she had whispered something she had never dared to say before. "I don't want to be like her." Nathan's face filled with sadness. "You won't be." Lily swallowed hard. "But what if I am?" Nathan shook his head. "You're not. You are nothing like her, Lily. You have a heart. You care. You fought to get away from her. That's who you are." She bit her lip, staring at her hands. "But I get angry sometimes. I get scared. And sometimes I don't know how to feel normal." Nathan sighed. "You've been through a lot, sweetheart. It's gonna take time. But no matter how hard it gets, you're never going to be like her." Lily blinked rapidly, trying to push down the lump in her throat. "You really think so?" Nathan smiled softly. "I know so. And somehow, that was enough. The future is theirs." Weeks passed. Nathan took her shopping for new clothes, things she actually wanted to wear. She started school again, slowly making new friends. She went to therapy every week, learning how to talk about the things she had buried deep inside her. And little by little, she started to heal. One afternoon, she and Nathan sat on the back porch, watching the sky fade into the soft colors of sunset. Lily turned to him. "Do you think she'll ever come back?" Nathan exhaled, his eyes darkening. "Maybe. But if she does, we'll be ready." Lily nodded, holding onto her turtle keychain. "I don't want to be afraid anymore." Nathan wrapped an arm around her shoulder. "You don't have to be. Not anymore." She leaned into his side, staring at the horizon. For so long, she had thought her life was already written, that she was trapped in a story where she would always be her mother's prisoner. But now, sitting beside her father, watching the sky stretch endlessly before them, she realized something. Her story wasn't over. It was just beginning. And this time, she was the one writing it.